Okay, well, first of all, Marco, I want to welcome you to my Real Talk with Robert. I am very happy and grateful that you've been willing to sit down with me to have this conversation for my YouTube channel. So, if you could maybe take a couple of minutes to just introduce yourself to the people who don't know you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, my name's Marco. I'm the head instructor and owner of SBG SoCal. I'm also the founder and owner of Speakeasy Jiu Jitsu. I also am a co-host on the Iron Grips podcast, and that's me. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm a black belt in American Kempo Karate. I teach boxing, kickboxing. I also run a law enforcement training program here at the gym. I teach everybody from like 4-year-olds to like people who are retired. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's pretty awesome. I think that could incorporate a lot of skill sets and everything that you've just talked about what you do and everything. So how long have you been doing this? Have you been in this martial arts?
I believe I'm going on 16 years. I started when I was like 15 years old, and I'm 31 now. I'm going to be 32.
That's awesome. So what drew you into wanting to do this?
So to train martial arts. So I had a really hard time in high school.
Okay.
I was getting in a lot of fights,
Okay.
and I went to a couple different high schools. I went to one in Sherman Oaks. I got bussed out from Eagle Rock to Sherman Oaks, and that school was like a mini prison. And then one of the teachers there ended up quitting and transferring to another high school. And he was like, "You should transfer with me." So me and a small group of friends went to that high school, which was in downtown LA. So I would take like 3 trains to get there, or a couple buses, and it was a good high school, but it was just tough. And there was a lot of kids from like Inglewood and East LA and Northeast LA and Crenshaw, and just so a lot of these kids with different backgrounds, a lot of kids from like gang families and stuff, and actually got into fights and here and there. And finally one of my teachers came up to me and he was like, "Hey, you should learn how to fight." And so I took his advice and I started doing Muay Thai, and I got my butt kicked for like 6 months, and then I quit martial arts altogether. Yeah, just because I was scared of it. I was always getting hurt. So then I had a friend who said that I should do Jiu Jitsu. And I went, and it was like actually right down the street, Villa Park. It was a gentleman named Tony. I don't know if he's still teaching, but he does free classes in the park, and it was fantastic. I fell in love with it. I couldn't get there every Saturday, so I was trying to train as much as I could. And then that same teacher who told me that I should learn how to fight said that he had a friend that was opening up a gym, and he brought me into that gym, a gentleman named John Boone, and he paid for like my first month or 2 months, 3 months of classes. And then I was hooked.
So what was the difference Jiu Jitsu versus Muay Thai?
I don't.
Yeah.
So the difference between the arts is Muay Thai is a striking-based art, and Jiu Jitsu is a grappling-based art. Okay. I was 15, 16 years old in an adult Muay Thai class where the coaches weren't that good. they didn't understand adaptability. They didn't understand adaptive resistance. They didn't understand training with aliveness. It was just fight as hard as you can, as long as you can. And when I got hurt, it was like, get back in there, get back up, you'll be okay. And it was just, I remember getting on the train one day after school. I was going there to train, and I got to the stop where I would get off to go home, and then the stop to go training was like 3 more stops, and I got off the train and never went back to that gym.
Yeah, that's interesting. So going back to your days where when you're in high school, you talked about there's all these fights and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that was unavoidable in your opinion, or
at the time it wasn't?
Okay.
Now looking back, I think it's funny because the more you know how to fight, the less fights you're in, and it's absolutely true. So my sophomore and junior year in high school, I got in a lot of fights, and then my senior year, I had already been training for 2 years. Almost no fights.
Okay. And what began all the fighting? Like, did you sort of instigated things, or were you part of a group that sort of had a knack for conflict and everything. How maybe you could take me to that.
It was a little bit of both. I think I was a little bit of an outlier at the school that I was at. You know, I had
Yeah.
like dyed hair, like dyed pink hair and green
Oh, wow.
hair, and I had like
Okay.
earrings, and
I see.
I was really into like metal music and punk music, and then my
Okay.
best friend was also a metalhead, and I think just being in like when I was growing up, if I got in a fight in elementary school, if I got hurt, my mom would say, "You need to hit them 2 times as hard," right? And so it was this, I think it was because they didn't have the ability to protect you when you weren't around. So they grew up with the mentality of you have to protect yourself, right? So you don't let anybody ever talk shit about you in high school. Because the second that you do, you become a victim. So at the very least, if you start throwing hands, even if you don't know how, because nobody knows how in high school, some kids are better at than others because they just have natural attributes. You're less likely to become a victim. So me and my best friend were the kids who were like, my best friend would like eat spiders. Well, I remember one time on the bus, I pushed a bobby pin through his cheek and it freaked out the kids who would normally bully us. And then I remember one of the kids brought a taser onto the bus and I was asleep. And he tased one of my other friends that actually trains with me now. And he went to tase me, but he was so scared of my best friend after the bobby pin thing, he just left me alone and let me sleep on the bus. And so it was things like that. It was a way to get people to leave you alone, in a sense. If you heard somebody was talking shit about you, you had to go and handle it. You didn't let anybody talk any shit about you.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And this is long. How many years ago? At the high school, we're talking about at least what, 15 years ago?
I graduated in 2010.
2010. So it makes you wonder, like, how things have changed since then. The world has changed since then, and
Yeah.
I'm only curious. What do you like? What kind of clients do you have, like, in your gym, in terms of the youth coming in? Do you feel that a lot of younger generation kids have that situation or that struggle, or they come here because they were like that version of you, where you were vulnerable more and you needed some ability to protect yourself, be able to be defensive and all that? How what motivations do you think is sort of precursor of people wanting to come here and say, okay, you know what, I want to sign up?
It's so, I think because the area that I'm in, I grew up in Highland Park in the 90s.
Okay.
It's full of gangs and
It was rough,
and
right?
It was really rough. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so this area is different. Kids come for money here. Some don't, but kids come for money here. A lot of our clients do. And what I see is you don't have their moms like my mom saying you need to hit back or you need to,
I see.
So there's these parents that are trying to be as peaceful as possible, but they don't have the answers when their kids are being bullied. Now, not everybody's here because they're being bullied, but I get a lot of parents calling me up and being like, we've tried everything, we've contacted the school, they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, can you help us? Absolutely. And it goes back to that thing that I said is once you know how to fight, you don't usually have to. And a lot of it is just you see the kids go from being like shy or timid and then they get that confidence. And that's the biggest thing, is having that confidence to be able to tell somebody no or back up or speak up for yourself, right?
Exactly. And knowing that you could protect yourself.
Yeah.
If you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's that giving that energy of, okay, you know what, I'm coming from a confident frame,
Yeah.
and they feel it, they see it.
Yeah.
And should they were to say, you know what, let me test this person, then you could handle that escalation,
Yeah.
that you want to avoid, I guess, per se.
And the good thing is
Yeah.
we're not like, I'm not having any of the kids like learn to bloody another kid or, you know, like to absolutely just beat them up. We teach them control.
Okay.
So they absolutely could probably rip another kid apart, but
Yeah.
a lot of the kids have empathy and they have the ability to sympathize for another person. And
Yeah.
we always say hurt people.
Yes.
So we have to understand where the bully's
Absolutely.
coming from, right? We
Yes.
don't know what's going on with them at home.
Absolutely.
Also, we tell our kids if you have to protect yourself and you break the other kid's nose or arm or something happens like that, and you went too far after that kid couldn't fight back, you are now the bully. You are now, like, so, and that's the way it looks to the school districts too.
Right.
So it's mostly about If they hit you, hit once or twice and run away. If they're trying to hit you, get them to the ground, hold them down. So
Yes,
it's about
yes.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, and that begs me to ask my question is, can you share some of the key principles and techniques that define jiu-jitsu as a martial art?
The key principles and techniques. Well,
Yeah,
techniques would be hard to talk about. I mean, there are key techniques that you see all the time, like the UFC,
yeah,
like the arm bar, double leg takedown, single leg takedown, rear naked choke. Rear naked choke has a lot of like bad press and good press because every time you see a police officer put somebody in a rear naked choke, people go crazy and are like,
oh, okay,
they demonize them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then every time you see a purple belt or a black belt or a blue belt in jiu-jitsu that apprehended somebody who was assaulting somebody else or
yeah,
robbing somebody else or got broken their home and they put them to sleep, everybody praises them. It's just a difference in training. There's also, so jiu-jitsu it's considered the gentle art because there's not any strikes really taught in jiu-jitsu. It's not, in my opinion, it could be just as crazy and as violent as a striking art,
yeah.
but you can dial it back, and that's the difference, right?
Okay,
I can train with you, and we could go relatively hard, and we could both be pretty safe. Our brains will be safe, or what keeps us safe is this thing called the tap. So when somebody taps in
okay.
jiu-jitsu, you do not disrespect the tap ever.
I see.
So when somebody's telling you stop, you stop. So we let go, make sure that the other person's okay, and then
I
we
see.
keep going, right? And we could go about 80, 90, 100% and still be relatively okay. If I go 70%, 80% in boxing, I could maybe go 1 round, 2 rounds. And then, I'm going to be leaving with a headache or the spins or something. So you really have to go light when you're especially if you're working with like the MMA gloves or you're
Okay.
throwing elbows or knees and we're doing full MMA training, you have to go way lighter. So it just depends. It depends. That's why they call it the gentle art. But
Right.
it also gives the smaller person the ability to protect themselves against somebody who's much larger and untrained, right? There's this old saying, and it's size doesn't matter in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
That's a lie.
Okay.
It absolutely does matter.
When you say size, what does that mean? Height, just build?
All of it, all of it. So
okay.
if me, 165,
Yeah.
175 pound me, goes up against somebody like one of my black belts, John Bond, I can only keep up with him. He's like he says he's like 212, 220. He's absolutely ripped, and
Okay.
he's really good at jiu-jitsu. He was my first black belt.
I see.
And he, I could go toe-to-toe with him because I have the skill to do so.
Yeah.
But if I was a belt less or 2 belts less, he would just maul me. He would just mop the floor with me, right?
I see.
Now, if he was a white belt, I'd have no problem. If he was a
Okay.
blue belt, I'd probably still have an okay time with him. Purple belt gets a little bit harder. Brown belt, okay, he's probably gonna be catching me, but I could probably control him. And then black belt, it's like toe for toe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Speaking of belts, that's something that I've always been very curious about.
Yeah.
Because, growing up, my dad and I we used to love martial arts movies, the Bruce Lee stuff,
Yeah.
the Hollywood. Probably not really what in real life may be, right, in terms of the practice. But I always was curious, okay, what does white belt mean? What does brown mean? Blue.
Yeah.
Can you go through the belt levels here and
Yeah.
where does it start and how long does it take more or less for someone to climb up? How does
Yes.
that process work? Yeah.
So you have like really famous arts like Taekwondo and Aikido
Yeah.
and different forms of karate, right? So in Taekwondo, it's my understanding, I don't practice Taekwondo, but I have a couple of friends that do, and I have students that train Taekwondo, and almost everybody I hear reaches their first black belt within like 2 years or 3 years. And then that's kind of where then the black belt dons start to, the different degrees start to carry on. It's a little bit different with our MMA system. So our MMA system, it goes white belt, yellow belt, orange belt, a purple belt, blue belt, green belt, then there are 3 brown belts, and then black belt. And that's modeled, just the belt colors are modeled after, because I'm a black belt in Kempo, we just kept the same colors, right? But we changed the curriculum completely. We don't teach Kempo anymore. We teach MMA. So we teach boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai in there. We do a little bit of judo and wrestling, a lot of jiu-jitsu in that class, and a lot of just off lines and teaching people how to fight efficiently, right? And so white belt, yellow belt, and orange belt in that system are beginners.
Yeah.
Once you get to purple, blue, purple and blue are like intermediate, and then once you get into the green belts and brown and black, that's advanced. And so the way I like to describe it is the two most important belts in almost any martial art, the white belt and the white belt and the black belt.
Okay.
And the white belt is because you're like a sponge. Everything I teach you and show you is brand new, right? And it's like that with Jiu Jitsu as well. Everything I show you, it's so exciting to be a white belt in any martial art because everything is new. And it's about taking in information, taking in as much as you can. And then you know, the next couple belts are about making mistakes and learning this and learning how to escape from bad positions, learning how to survive. And then the next couple belts are about learning how to attack and learning how to control another person. And then once you get to black belt is just having a really good understanding of all fundamentals. So at the black belt level, like every belt, we're teaching you this is a screwdriver, this is a hammer, this is a saw, this is what you use that for. By the time you get to black belt, you get to use all those tools together. And you get to make something of it. And then you get to give back. So then we take that sponge that you had at white belt and we wring it out and you get to give information back to everybody else.
Almost like you're becoming a coach, so to speak, maybe?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, not every black belt is meant to coach, and that's why in Jiu Jitsu you see some of the black belts only have a red bar, and some of the black belts have the white bars on the end, and then we have the degrees through the belts. So you have to go through my teaching program, or the teaching program we have here in order to earn your white bars on your black belt. You don't just get it automatically. Yeah. It depends, because if you've been teaching for a long time up to black belt, sometimes we give the white bars right away. If you haven't and you want to start teaching at black belt, then you have to go through a year of our teaching program.
That's interesting. So in your case, you are black belt and you have third degrees?
No, so I have my professor bars, so I have my teaching stripes, and then I'm a first degree.
I see. And are you currently still working on climbing that ladder?
Yeah, always. So Jiu-Jitsu is kind of special because you get a degree every 3 years as long as you're still active in the sport. A lot of times they want to see, are you teaching, are you giving back, are you competing, what are you doing to further push the art. So 3 years have passed, I got my first degree. After another 3 years I'll get my second, 3 years, my third, until my fourth, and then it's every 5 years until you're fifth, I believe, and then every 7 until you're ninth or 10th.
And it goes all the way up to red, right?
Yeah, so at 7th degree, you get something called a coral belt, and it's a black and red belt, like the coral snake. And then you get, at 9th degree, you get your red belt.
That's amazing.
I'll probably be dead by the time that
I think it takes like, 40 years on average?
Something crazy.
There's very few people who have red belt in the world. I think like 40 people or something like that. So Jiu-Jitsu started in Japan, and the name of it really essentially means gentle art, which you mentioned. If I'm not mistaken. And then one guy who was really proficient at it went to Brazil and taught it in Brazil. And then that's sort of how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sort of was born, right, in a sense. And your style or your teaching method, is it based on more like Brazilian sort of methodology, or doesn't not matter?
It really doesn't matter. My teaching methodology and the way that I teach is based off of a couple different people. Number one, one of my original coaches, John Boone, so keeping things super friendly. Then my other coach, Matt Parks, who's like super old school and doesn't have a ton of details when he teaches, but he's a really good example of what it means to be a great coach and also a really good jiu-jitsu practitioner. And so he teaches mostly like really simple, easy to use foundational techniques that anybody can apply, but he shows you, or he teaches it to you by like showing you the pressure and how things should be applied. And it's one of the best teaching tools that I've ever learned, because some of the kids, if you just tell them how to do it, or some of the adults, you just tell them how to do it, they don't get it. You actually have to make them feel it. And then it starts to click. Then I have Matt Thornton, who's the president of SBG. He's our main head instructor. So we've adapted a lot of the way that we teach here to the way that all of SBG teaches. And then we also have Chris Howder, who's another one of our coaches. He teaches here every other Tuesday. And so it's been awesome working with him. He's like the main person that I get most of my instruction from now.
Oh, wow.
And he's actually Matt Thornton's coach, and he's a 6th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Wow.
And so the way he teaches, it's kind of like all over the place with really good detail. Like I can see how sometimes it can be a little bit confusing for people because he has a really fast-paced class. But then when he starts to break things down, it's I don't think anybody breaks things down the way he does. And he does the same thing that Matt Parks does, where he wants you to feel the techniques. And so it's extremely beneficial to have him here at this gym.
That's good to hear that. And I've seen videos of your the different coaches and people that are
Yeah.
featured in your videos. I think was it Scott you said?
Chris?
Oh, Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris was definitely one of them. He looks very tough.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that he's got a lot of years in this
Yeah.
and really exudes that sense of
Yeah.
competency in it.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen him here too in person. I watched some of your sessions here, and it's pretty impressive, and it's something that I never really knew anything about. Jiu-Jitsu was something that I would only hear on TV.
Yeah.
Those UFC fights and everything. I know Joe Rogan is one. He's he's a really tough guy, and I think he's practiced jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he's a black belt under Eddie Bravo.
Black belt? Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you see the guys in action, sparring and everything, and it's pretty intimidating, to be honest with you. But at the same time, it looks very respectful. It's like there's a lot of camaraderie, somebody called camaraderie
Yeah.
between the guys involved. They seem to really care about each other's
Yeah.
sense of well-being and safety.
Yeah.
As soon as they tap, they immediately stop. There's a lot of respect and honor, I guess,
Yeah.
in between the guys, and I really like that. I was very impressed by it. I didn't expect to see that. And the other thing that I want to ask you about is, can you describe a memorable moment from Jiu-Jitsu journey that has had a significant impact on you as a person? Just in personal life, how has
Yeah.
it impacted you?
So I've been really blessed in my journey with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to go teach seminars at other gyms and train with people all around the world and some of the best in the sport. I have a lot of friends in the sport, a lot of people that are world champions, and so it's I'm very fortunate where I get to go to other gyms and either teach or train. And I got to teach last year in Georgia at the biggest camp that SBG holds, which is, so they hold 2 camps every year, and it was the 30th anniversary. And Matt Thornton, I talked with him, and he asked me if I wanted to teach at camp, and I was like, whoa, that's actually really awesome that you want me to teach at the 30th anniversary. And then we got there, and I was like, oh, I'm teaching at the 30th anniversary. Chris Howder's here, Henry Akins, John Frankel, Matt Thornton, like all these, Paul Sharp and Ray Price, and all these legends that are, I get to, I'm a coach alongside them, but these are guys that I looked up to for so long.
Yeah.
And so then I got to go through some of the stuff that I teach here all the time, and some of the stuff that I've been working on developing and doing. That was awesome. Another thing is I got to teach in Japan this year.
Oh, wow.
And that was a big one for me. So I have
That's
a
pretty
friend
amazing.
that has a gym out there, and he invited me out. And so me and my wife, we were planning a trip already, and we got to go out there, and I filmed the whole experience, and I plan to put it on my YouTube channel, Speakeasy Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
But it was really cool to go out there and have like a translator and teach a self-defense seminar. And so I teach a seminar that's self-defense for people who train jiu-jitsu and people who only focus on like the sport aspect of it, which is absolutely okay. And any of those could probably rip somebody that's trying to hurt them, like rip them apart. But it's just the mentality behind it. If you don't focus on it and feel like you never need to use it, when it comes time to actually needing it, sometimes people can freeze up. So it's actually just like a fun seminar that I teach. And I got to do that in Japan, and that was a really awesome experience.
That's pretty amazing. And actually, Japan is a place that I would love to visit. My childhood friend actually lives there.
Oh, cool.
And he and I always talk about me visiting him, and I've always been very drawn to the culture. It's I would say it's one of the most respectful, interdependent, collective-minded culture. And that's something that I would love to go experience myself. You know, that
Yeah.
sense of honor, respect, that sense of caring for each other is it's almost like an unspoken rule.
Yeah.
You know, you could go on an escalator and you see everyone like on one side.
On one side, yeah.
Because in case if one person is in a rush, they have a space to go up and not having to wait until, you know, they reach all the way up there.
Yeah.
There's little minor things that they do that is so different than like the Western society.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much I respect that and I
Yeah.
love that. And I want to experience that. You know, what is your experience with that?
Japan's a beautiful place, and then everybody that we met there was super respectful.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about not knowing any Japanese, and
yeah.
it's everybody there. I had heard that they want you to try, and then some people don't want you to try. And all the experiences we had were fantastic. Everybody either really tried to help us and work with us, and like even tried to work through their broken English as much as they could, or they spoke really good English. Just depends on where we were. But everybody was super friendly. Yeah, there is a sense of like honor there everywhere
Yes.
you go.
Yes,
Everybody
yes.
is polite and everybody is
Yeah.
respectful of each other. And even when a train is super, super crowded, like everybody's just kind of minding their own business. Not
Yes.
like here in LA or in New
There's no
York.
obnoxious person in
Where
there.
you get people
you know?
screaming at you about
Exactly.
almost anything, or you know,
know.
you're scared you're gonna get stabbed. Like it
I
just
know.
wasn't like that there.
There's sense of safety there.
Yeah, yeah. I did get a lot of stares.
Yes.
I mean, I'm you know, I'm a little bit taller. Obviously, I'm not Japanese,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I definitely did the tourist thing where I had like 2 cameras on me. I had the fanny pack. I
that right?
like, yeah, man.
So you stood out in that sense.
Yeah, I went all out. I was wearing the hiking boots.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So,
amazing.
but the cool thing is, I was
Yeah.
always wearing like a jiu-jitsu shirt. So
Oh, really?
I was getting like other tourists coming up to me and
Oh,
being
I
like, "You
see.
train jiu-jitsu?" Like,
that right?
yeah. Like, and then we'd start talking, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I had a few people that came up to me
Yeah.
and talked to me about jiu-jitsu. Also, if you don't know Japanese and you're not going there to visit anybody, so I went there to go visit my friend Shoya and teach at his gym, but we were only with him for 1 day.
I see.
Outside of that, it was extremely isolating.
Was that right?
Because you can't really have a full conversation with
it's true.
people. Even with Google Translate, it was really
Yeah.
hard, and like I was the only person my wife had to talk to.
That's right.
You know, so she only wanted to talk about jiu-jitsu or Star Wars for so long.
Is that right?
And only so much. So it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it was still awesome, and we got
Yeah.
to visit like a bunch of shrines and do a bunch
Oh,
of cool
yes,
stuff
yes.
there. So
That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Did you go to Tokyo by any chance?
yeah, so we were in Tokyo, Osaka,
Yeah.
and Kyoto, and then we went to
Wow.
Kobe, and we went to Nara.
I see.
Yeah,
Which one did you like the most?
I
Not that
like
there's-
Osaka and
Osaka?
Kyoto.
I see.
Yeah, Osaka was really cool. So the way somebody in Japan, so we went to this bar at one of the hotels we were staying at, and I really like whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like the 3 big W's I always say, or the 3 W's in my life
Yeah.
are my wife, watches, and whiskey.
Is that right?
Yeah, and wrestling. Sorry, the 4 W's. So
Okay.
wrestling. It has to be wrestling.
Right, right.
And I went to a bar there, and I happened to get the bartender who spoke somewhat good English, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we were talking, and this was in Osaka, and he said that he went to New York, and it reminded him of Japan. And he said that a lot of people say in Japan that New York is like Tokyo, and Osaka is like LA, like California. And I felt that, and he
Oh.
said it was because they have mountains and
I
the
see.
ocean
I see.
in Osaka, and the city's more sprawled out. In Tokyo, it feels very dense. Even though Tokyo is the
Yeah.
largest city in the world, it's very dense there. So
That's so true. Yeah, it's very congested. But you know, even though you see people weaving in and out of each other, but
Yeah.
it seems very organized, right?
yeah, they're still like
There's
moving around each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, here people would be shoulder checking each
That's
other.
true. I would go crazy
Yeah.
in that environment because I get claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love having a certain amount of space between people.
Yeah, see, I do jiu-jitsu, so like my wife was like,
Oh, I
she didn't like
see.
people on her on the train, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
didn't care.
Because you're always sort of physically close to people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Closer than you would ever come.
Yeah, human contact, I don't really
Yeah.
care
You're
anymore,
comfortable
so,
with it.
Yeah.
You know, when I hear you talk about your past, all the fights and the environment that you grew up in and everything, I would say, would it be accurate to say, just jiu-jitsu as an art form and everything was a form of therapy even, in a way?
So I would say that. I would say it was a good way because I was an angry teen, man.
Yeah.
I was just an angry teen, and I was a child of divorce, and
Oh, I see.
and I did a lot of stuff on my own, and
Yeah.
I think it was a good outlet for anger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that jiu-jitsu or fighting in any way should be a replacement for therapy for anybody.
Yeah,
But I do
absolutely.
think it is a good way to express yourself. And
Yeah.
there's this quote in Fight Club. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it goes something like, when you start fighting, or like when you start doing this, the volume on like the rest of the bullshit in your life gets turned down.
Is that right?
Absolutely true.
Oh, wow.
You are not thinking about the flat tire you got earlier today,
Interesting.
or the bills that are due, or the argument you got with your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife when somebody is trying to choke you to sleep or break your arm. Like you're just not thinking about it.
Interesting.
And so at the very least, it puts pause to all the rest of like the BS that you have to deal with in your life. And it allows you that moment of silence for you to just focus on you, which we get so rarely as an adult now, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is that we don't really get as adults anymore is that praise from a teammate or a coach, or that somebody telling you, hey, you need to get your shit together and do this technique right, or you're going to get armbarred again.
Wow.
You know, but it's coming from like a loving place, and we just don't get that anywhere else. You know, it's really hard to, even at a really good job at the very least, they're like, great job today, good work. Here, it's like, holy crap, you got that armbar you've been working on. Fantastic.
Right?
Let's go on to the next thing. Like,
Wow.
you get that from the rest of the team. And I think that's something that's really amazing about this sport. Because it's not only just about the individual, it's about everybody in the group. And that's why you get teams like SBG, Gracie Barra, Alliance, Autos, AOJ, and you see these tight-knit groups. And you see how well they work together and how close the people are there. And it's because it's a family outside of your family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a very special place.
I've heard about that because, David, who is my friend, he talks about that where, one of his favorite places to be is here. And because of that, it feels like a family to him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of that brotherhood kind of a connection that he feels. And he feels it's sort of humbling and grounding.
Yeah.
And are the guys here that they meet here and they practice their skills together? Does that carry out in their personal life? Like they actually still keep in touch and create friendship and all that?
Yeah. So a lot of us from the gym hang out with each other outside of training.
Oh, is that right?
Like a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
It's pretty cool, man. Because we'll get people who, I always tell people, you'll have your friends, like your best friends, and then you'll have your fighting friends or your friends that do jiu-jitsu, and your other friends. No matter how much you're like, you should come try. Sometimes you'll get that one friend who'll come in and try and absolutely love it. Sometimes you'll get that one friend who'll come and try and be like, dude, that's weird.
Is that right?
Just your friends outside of jiu-jitsu, they won't get it.
I see.
It's a tough thing.
It's a
I
different
actually
thing.
have one of my friends who joined 2 or 3 years ago now. I had been bugging him for like 10 years. Like, come in, you should do jiu-jitsu, you should do jiu-jitsu. I ran into him at a gas station. I hadn't seen him in a long time. I was like, come to my gym. Like, just come in and try it. He finally came in.
Okay.
And he was like, man, now I get it. This is what you were talking about all those years. Like, I should have started back when we were in high school. He'd be a black belt now.
Wow.
So
Imagine that.
Yeah. But it's a very special place.
It is. Is it like it's never really too late to start, right?
No.
It could pretty much be any age as long as you're reasonably healthy, right?
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's if as long as you don't have anything like anything that's like you're not like terminally ill or you don't have like any like crazy heart problems, you'll be okay.
I see.
I have people here, all shapes and sizes, all levels of athleticism. One of the excuses that drives me crazy when people call me up or friends that are like, hey, I really want to start, but I got to go to the gym for like 6 months and get in shape before I start. Like, that's all bullshit. Like, just come in. You'll have a better time getting in shape here, and it'll be easier to get in shape because you're not going to the gym and forcing yourself to go and diet and do all of that. Like, all of that stuff is great, but a lot of people who aren't naturally like motivated to do that won't do it. They'll do it for 2 weeks and then stop. right?
I see.
Coming
Yeah.
here, you're getting the same workouts, you're
Yeah.
learning something, you're distracted, you're making new friendships.
Sure.
And so it's a little bit easier. So like skip all that other stuff, come in and just have fun. Just do it.
Yeah. It's because gym is a very individualistic thing to do.
Yeah,
right? You're
it's
on your
also
own.
really intimidating. I mean, this is intimidating too because you see
Yeah.
all the like the highlight
yeah,
reels
the
on
levels.
YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you come into a foundation class and
yeah.
you realize how friendly everybody is, and you
Sure.
realize nobody's out to murder you, nobody's
Yeah,
out to like
exactly.
hurt you, and
Yeah.
everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
make sure that the whole team is getting better. It's encouraging to see that person walk in on their first day and then realize you could potentially be changing the rest of their life.
That's
Right?
true.
Even if they're with me for 2 months or 6 months or whatever it is, you're altering the rest of their life in the way that they see other people, the way that they hold themselves, the way that they see the sport, and it's pretty cool because I'm in a fortunate position as a coach
Yeah.
to be with a student for as long as they want to be or that they can be. So like if I was a kindergarten teacher,
Yeah.
I'll maybe see those kids first, second, third grade, or but I will not have that relationship with them.
There's no continuity.
Yeah, right?
Mhm.
I have some kids that started with me at 4 years old and now they're going to college. I have some people that started with me in
Wow,
middle school
that's pretty
and
neat.
now I saw them go to college and now they're back to training.
Yeah.
And it's these relationships that I couldn't imagine having
Yeah.
anywhere else. Also, I'm best friends with like a rocket scientist from JPL. I'm best
wow.
friends with police officer. I'm best friends with with all these with an artist and all these
Yeah.
different people that I couldn't imagine meeting anywhere else.
Yes.
Like what other group setting would I meet like different like people from all these different walks of life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because it brings this sense of diversity.
Yeah.
And you learn from different people.
Yeah.
That person who works maybe for the police department may have a different way of coping with life. Just have different kind of way of thinking, skill sets, and will share maybe something that you'll be
Yeah.
like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And that's what's so good about the diversity aspect of it. And so for those that actually join and they are committed, what do you expect of them in terms of how many times a week they need to come in?
Yeah, I always recommend 2 days a week, especially for beginners.
Okay.
Some people want to come in
Yeah.
and they do their first class and they're like, I want to do unlimited. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. So I've done that before. And
Yeah.
then they come in, they do an entire week, and then I don't see them for another week because
Oh.
they're just destroyed. So I'm like,
Is that right?
for a brand new beginner who's like that person who doesn't
Yeah.
work out outside of here and just, sits at a desk all day, I'm like, do the 2 days a week. We'll do that for a month, then we can switch you if you fill out for it. Sometimes we can switch them sooner. Totally okay. Sometimes I get people who just came out of the Marine Corps and they're
Oh, is that right?
ready to go and they come in and they're like, I only have time for once a week right now. And then they do the one class and they're like, you know what, I want to do unlimited. I'm going to make it work. Like, cool. That person can handle it. That person, absolutely okay. And then we get all the people in between. So I recommend 2 days a week. For anybody just starting out,
Yeah.
it's a good progression. It'll keep you on track. Once a week is okay if that's all you can do. If you do 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, more the better. It depends on you.
And that has an influence as to how quickly you progress in terms of getting promotion, in terms of belt and all that?
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Okay.
Yes and no. It depends. Getting promoted and like to your next belt is something that is so personal to the singular athlete.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
It could be skill-based, it could be personality-based, it could be a progression-based thing, it could be goal-based. It just depends on that person. That's one of the hardest jobs as a coach is knowing when somebody is ready for that next belt. We do have a curriculum, standardized curriculum that we go through. All the coaches know it, and every student will see that curriculum. Sometimes some students need to see it 2 times. Sometimes some students need to see it 3 times.
I see.
And we do usually 2 or 3 promotions a year. So people are getting stripes at that point, and some
Okay.
people are getting belts at that point. It just really depends.
I see. So it's not fixed
Yeah.
expectation in terms of where you go in terms of a promotion. It also depends how much you put into it
Yeah.
and how quickly you are likely to learn, right? Some people are
Yeah.
more quicker to learn, right?
Yeah.
And adapt and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So those who actually do jiu-jitsu, do you see them also? Do you like, in other words, do you recommend them also going, let's say, hitting the weights, the gym, and all that, to
Yeah.
have an advantage over
Yeah, so
this whole thing?
anybody obviously who's more athletic is going to have an easier time
Oh, is
moving
that
and
right?
controlling somebody else,
Okay.
but nothing, in my opinion, beats technique.
Technique,
So
yeah.
when you have technique
Yeah.
and you have flexibility, or you have technique and you have strength, or you have technique and endurance,
Right.
you know, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Because if you just come in as a, I've seen guys who sit at a desk all day, have no interest in running or hitting the weights or doing any of that, and they just come in 2 or 3 times a week and roll. I've seen those guys destroy some athletes because they're so focused on technique sometimes, and they're, you know, and they come in, they have fun, and they're also sometimes not as injured
Oh, okay, is that
too.
right?
Yeah,
With that
sometimes
better
they're not.
conditioning.
Yeah, they're, and sometimes I see them get thrown around by the athletes. So it just depends. It really depends. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, going back to the sort of social aspect of this, you know, this art, it really seems like, you know, like when I was a young adult, I was introverted, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and to a certain degree I am, and it was difficult for me to establish bonds with my peers and, you
Yeah.
know, feel a sense of confidence to sort of be assertive,
Yeah.
because I felt like, okay, I'm going to get judged, I'm going to be perceived as weak or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And in some ways I regret not taking on some kind of a martial art,
Yeah.
maybe in the case of Jiu Jitsu. And I can't imagine where I would have been if I had immersed into this world
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
Because I know for you it has made such a difference, where you've not only become a more confident and competent person as a person, but actually it has helped you develop as an individual, right?
Yeah.
And you've created all these connections with people that may be like lifelong, you know,
Yeah.
because the bond is deeper among people that you spar with or you coach and
Yeah.
everything, versus just a regular friend that you meet at a bar and that you could become friends with, whatever. So I forgot what my question really was, but I was going to basically say
You can
that,
let them pass.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So those youngsters that are struggling with that, where they're, you know, like right now we live with our cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
We connect with the people through cell phones, which is
Yeah.
not the same as one-on-one. That
Yeah.
will never ever replace it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, I think the younger generation, some people are feeling maybe isolated, especially with the pandemic that came
Yeah.
about a few years ago. It became even more difficult for people to connect. So there's that lack of skill set that people have
Yeah.
in terms of being able to communicate with people, be able to relate. It seems to me one of the ways to sort of break out of that is through joining some kind of a gym.
Yeah.
One of them being SBG.
Yeah. It's also extremely
Yeah,
humbling. So
it is, right.
one of the problems that we have a lot with with our kids being bullied is a lot of like cyberbullying, or like getting
I see.
texts or messages online,
Right.
and a lot of people don't understand that our words have consequences.
Yes, yes.
When I was in high school and I said something bad, or somebody said something bad about me,
Right.
it was like, you know, we're
Yeah.
and I'm not condoning that, but I was,
Yeah.
you know, you learn really fast that, like, hey, if you call somebody something bad or you say something bad about somebody, they can hit you, right? We can't just say stuff and not expect something to happen. Unfortunately, now kids don't have, or either they're not around this or they're not exposed to it or whatever it is. We see kids that are
Yeah.
getting bullied, and then they go to school and then they shoot up the school.
Right.
Right, and
Right.
it goes back to that. Oh, I don't have an answer for it. How do I,
Yeah.
you know,
Deal with
it's
the anger and feelings, emotions, and all that.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and it could express itself in a different way. That's obviously the like
Yeah.
the explosion of the volcano, right? Is the kid
Yeah.
going to school and shooting up the school. It's
Yeah.
unfortunately, it was something that we see so much, and I'm not going to get into everything about that, but it could also be a kid doing self-harm.
Yes. Yes.
It could also
Right, exactly.
be a kid that goes into using substances. It could be an adult going into using substances, or expressing themselves in harmful ways.
Sure.
That's where, like, not therapy, but it does help to have the ability to express yourself through a martial art or on the mats, or, you know, have that pause from all of the other BS, and then realize that, oh, well, just because I have this kid at school that's bullying me, well, now I have the ability to speak up and I'm more confident about it. And if he does ever try to do anything to me, I can actually protect myself.
Sure.
Or I can tell him to stop, or I can leave the situation and not have to care if somebody's calling me these nasty things, right?
That's true. That's true.
And we talk about this in our bully defense like program with the kids.
Oh wow, you guys have that here?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
and we
awesome.
talk about, like, you know, we always use our words. We always look for help.
Yeah.
The very last thing we do is fight. We always teach them to run away first. Go get get help.
Yes, yes.
That's a great thing to do. You know, and who cares if somebody's going to call you a chicken? There's nothing that anybody can call me or say to me that is going to hurt me so much.
Like trigger you, in other words?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can say anything you want to me. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the good thing is, too, about jiu-jitsu is there is always going to be somebody bigger, better, and stronger than you on the mats.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I can't be on the top of my game every single day. There's days when, like, I'm just not feeling it, and we have this saying in jiu-jitsu, it's some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail, and some days I am the nail. And jiu-jitsu is extremely humbling.
Yeah.
Some people have a hard time with that. Some people have a big ego, and then they come in, and you can tell when somebody's not going to last long because they just can't get past a toxic ego, right?
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's okay if you're a competitor and you have a big ego and you're always winning. Cool, you need that ego, right? You need that ego because you cannot step on the mats in a competition thinking I might lose this match. Like, no, you have to be at the top of your game always. But if you're coming in and you have that same attitude with the people who are trying to help you get better, you're not going to go very far. If you are competing with your teammates every single class and it's not a competition class, you're not going to last long because you're going to have your ass handed to you time and time again, and you're not going to be able to cope with that. It's humble pie, and some people have trouble eating humble pie.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, and you've seen it all these years. You know, the people that have come, and you could probably tell now, as you said, who might be not fit.
Yeah, and I do my very best to coach people through that.
To support them,
We are like 20% jiu-jitsu instructors.
Right?
You know, jiu-jitsu actually teaching the art, that's the easy part.
Oh,
the hard part is all the sports therapy and the sports psychology that goes behind it, and actually all the different teaching methods that we have to keep somebody interested, not injured, and to keep people focused and staying on the mats. Because I hit like points in my jiu-jitsu where I'm stagnating, and I hit plateaus where it's hard for me to continue to progress. If I'm hitting that as a head instructor, I know my students are also hitting that. And sometimes that could be really discouraging. And so that's why you see in all gyms, a lot of people will quit at blue belt. And it's because when you start at white belt, blue belt's the second belt. When you start at white belt, you're like, oh my God, these blue belts are amazing. They keep kicking my ass. And then finally you get promoted to blue belt, and you're like, I still feel the same as I did when I was a white belt. What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's because the progression is a lot slower than a lot of other things.
I see.
And so people have a hard time coping with that. Also, life happens.
Sure.
Like, people have things, either you move away or people get injuries that they have to deal with, and they just, some people don't want to get re-injured.
Yeah. Is it pretty common in the sport, the injuries?
Yeah, I mean, little injuries, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Bumps.
What's the most common? Shoulder or?
Shoulder injuries, knee injuries.
I see.
Fingers. Especially when you're doing gi jiu-jitsu, fingers sometimes get injured. That's why you'll see guys with their fingers all taped up. My fingers are all mashed up and gnarled.
They're like the knuckles. I mean,
I have
the
gnarled,
fingers, the joints.
gnarled hands.
Yeah. It's part of the
noses. Fortunately, we haven't had. I mean, we've been open since 2009, 2008, and we haven't had like any major injuries really. So we do a pretty good job of it. But going out to competitions, I mean, I've had quite a few injuries training at the level that I've trained for a long time.
Yeah, and you overcame.
Yeah. Just, I think the worst injury that the two worst injuries I've had are, I broke my sternum.
Is that right?
Yeah, I broke my sternum, and I also, sorry, that's my puppy. I broke my sternum, and I herniated 3 discs in my neck and my back. So the one in the back, if it's not bugging me, cool, whatever. But when it is bugging me,
I
it's bad. So
I see.
yeah.
I see. Yeah, it's kind of the part of the potential cost of doing this, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
everything
just like
has
anything else.
everything has a cost. I've seen
Exactly.
worse injuries from our guys that go play pickup basketball or go play soccer.
Yeah.
I've seen, broken femurs from that, and
Yeah. Or even pickleball, you could
Yeah.
fall down and hurt your elbow.
Yeah,
Or whatever
yeah.
that may be.
yeah, you get injured doing anything.
Exactly.
Do you want to, do you want to sit on the couch all day and have
That's the thing.
heart disease and never
Yeah,
be,
exactly.
and die at 40, or do you want to go
Exactly.
and actually do something?
That's true. Even people who have office jobs, they get carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
They get back issues
Yeah.
because they're sitting and their posture's
Yeah,
bad.
man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's inevitable. Everything has its sort of potential consequence.
Yeah.
So I guess getting close to wrapping it up. I know you're really busy. You gotta get going. But those that actually are watching and they have youngster at home,
Yeah.
whether if it's a boy, girl, whatever, what's like an ideal age to start, in your opinion?
I would start them as early as possible.
Okay. What age would that be? Do you think?
You would start them at if you have the ability to, and an instructor that could take on the task, 2 years old.
Is that right?
Yeah, 2 years old.
That's
because
incredible.
You start with the tumbling, you start with the
Wow.
idea of wrestling, and there's
That's
things that they
amazing.
can learn at that age.
Wow.
It's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be like spaghetti, so it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be really fun for them. Then by 3 years old, they're learning how to do bear crawls and learning how to do tumbling and learning
Yeah.
how to apply more pressure. We start them in our group classes at 4.
Oh,
4
I see.
years old.
4 years old.
Yeah, so we start saying, hey, is this 4-year-old ready to do the group classes? And I always have to remind parents too, because if we have like a 4-year-old that's just like all over the place, can't listen, I still have to run a class, so it's not a daycare, it is a
Yeah.
class, and I'll
Yeah,
do
yeah.
the best we can to keep that student focused, but sometimes they just need to wait 6 months.
I see.
Sometimes
I
it's just about that, and that 6 month
Mm-hmm.
is a big deal, especially when you have a kid that's at 4 years old, right? Think
see.
about that at a percentage rate of their life. It's a big chunk of their life, 6 months.
Yeah.
And they could develop a lot more, and I don't want their first learning experience a lot of the times to be with me. Just because if they've done swimming lessons, usually swimming lessons, I'll always ask kids
Yeah.
what are your favorite superheroes, your favorite color?
Yeah.
Have you done any other sports?
Uh-huh.
Have you done swimming lessons? And parents are like, why are you asking about swimming lessons?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not gonna
Well, what
drown
is
here."
it about that?
Swimming lessons, the reason why is that's like the highest danger level kind
that
of for
right?
that age group. I mean, yeah, the alternative of not knowing how to swim is
Well,
drowning.
obviously drowning. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
So
true,
they
that's
have
true.
to be able to
Yeah.
take instruction. They have to be able to be without the parent a lot of the times when doing swimming lessons.
Exactly.
It's also a big fear leap for a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a kid comes in, they're 4 years old, and the parents are like, yeah, they've done swimming lessons. I'm like, okay, this kid's going to be a little bit easier to teach. They're going to
see.
be a little bit more focused. And if they're not focused, they
Yeah.
won't be afraid to step on the mats.
Yeah, they're familiar with fear.
Yeah.
Or the experience of fear response.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
parents, if you're looking to get your kids in anything at an early age, start with swimming lessons. Not only should
That's so
everybody
cool
know
to
how to
know.
swim, like it's a good way to kind of experience
Yeah.
other arts
Yes.
too as well. Like if they're scared of soccer, hockey, gymnastics, or martial arts, like swimming's a good way to go.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's good to know that, and I appreciate that you detailed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it probably will be helpful for whoever's considering having their kids
Yeah.
in some kind of martial arts.
Yeah.
And and I think starting that early is such a gift to give to your child, because we live in a world where we're always faced with something like adversity, even if it's not caused by somebody else.
Yeah.
But it could be just self-created conflict internally. Self-doubts, limiting
Yeah.
beliefs, and I think having jiu-jitsu as a potential discipline,
Yeah.
it teaches you discipline, right? It teaches you that it's the importance of consistency and not giving up and confidence, and you build character with it.
Yeah.
That I think that's absolutely fantastic, and you've been through that, and you've come where you are today, the version you are now versus the Marco of 15, 16 years ago. Wow,
Yeah.
it's you probably like this version any day versus back then.
I wish I still had
yeah.
the same bones and joints that I had when I was 15,
Well,
16 years
before all
old.
the trauma, yeah.
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 Oh man, when I was like 18, I'd have like I remember I was rolling one time,
Yeah.
separated elbow.
Is that right?
I was on the mat that same week training again for
Wow.
competition, and
That's amazing.
and because I would heal like Wolverine.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just heal super fast. Now it's like Man, I hit my knee too hard on the mat. I'm like, I need to really just slow down a little bit and make sure, because I'm not competing anymore. And if I get injured, I can't. I'm taking away from my students, so I won't be able to teach. So
I see. Takes you away. So yeah.
yeah,
I see. So you're being more. You know, you have this role here of a main person here, right?
Yeah.
You're like you own this place, and
yeah,
you know you gotta sort of be available to your
yeah.
students.
But my name is not on the front of the building.
No, no.
It's SBG, and so all the other black belts here are just as important as me.
Yeah.
And I make sure that all the other students
yeah.
know that they are. We have some fantastic coaches here, and and all different styles of jiu-jitsu, all know how to teach the foundations really well.
That's right.
And all the different principles really well. And so we have a really, really good team.
That's really good. I really appreciate hearing that, because you walk in shoulder to shoulder mentality versus hey, the boss is here. You know.
Yeah.
I don't like. Yeah, I personally respect the way you handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's great, and others see you as a peer essentially. You know.
Yeah.
That's
because what we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That's
I have 2 of my instructors here that teach, and then I have 3 of my black belts that are coaching for me. And it's cool to be able to share the mats with them and have them in these leadership roles, and to have our other students see the way that that they've developed their jiu-jitsu and the way that they teach and their styles and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you get to learn. It's never-ending learning thing.
Yeah.
And then before we get to your socials and everything that people could reach you at, if we could maybe have a closing thought, that something that you would like to add that we haven't talked about. Is there anything you would like to finish this off with? That you would love for someone that's watching to listen and hear and say, okay.
Yeah, I think that people need to learn how to fail. I think that people need to learn. I always tell my students, there's no 2 better teachers than failure and pain.
That's true.
Because if you fail at something, you know what not to do next time.
Exactly.
And if you've experienced pain with something like fire, when you're a kid, if you touch fire, you get burned, guess what? You're probably not going to touch fire anymore.
That's true.
Right? And so whether it's martial arts or whether you're thinking about going to go get your master's or PhD and you're scared of it, or you want to start a business, everything, you're going to experience failure all along the way, but it's people that don't give up that succeed. And so anybody that's thinking about trying something new or trying to progress themselves in their career or whatever it is, don't be afraid to fail and just continue to progress. Like, just push yourself forward.
Yes, and that's one of I appreciate that I asked you that, because it's such an important thing that you just touched upon, because fear is a big deal for people. Yeah. Because that's our primitive nature. You know, our brain is geared for survival. Yeah. And people avoid pain, thinking that I'm safeguarding myself from pain. But the only thing that really teaches you in life is failure.
Yeah.
And you learn from it. So failure is really not a bad thing, technically.
Yeah.
It actually teaches you something.
Yeah, it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool.
It's a very useful tool.
Yeah, and you just have to not let yourself fail multiple times, with the same exact thing. You got to change up your method. But anyway, so to wrap it up, tell us where we could find you.
I'm here at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
I'm here 6 days a week. We have classes for anyone from 4 years old and up. If you'd like to come and train with us, you're more than welcome. We give free trials to everybody that wants. You can go to our website, SBGSoCal.com, SBGSoCal.com, and there's opt-in pages there where you can just put in your info, and then we'll have a coach reach out to you to set up an intro lesson. If you're interested in seeing our YouTube channel, it's Speak Easy Jiu-Jitsu. We have a bunch of coaches logs. You could see our story through COVID and through the pandemic and how we kept the gym open.
Okay.
It's also just really fun to see what the coaches are doing outside of jiu-jitsu. You can also look at our podcast. We have a podcast, me and John Bond, who's one of the black belts here, called Iron Grips Podcast. We haven't been active on that one in a little bit, but we want to get back to that one very soon. But there's some really good episodes on there. You can hit us up on Instagram, SBG SoCal, SBG_SoCal, or my personal Nightlight_M. Yeah, and that's where you can reach me. That's
awesome. Well, Marco, thank you so much. I appreciate you letting me visit you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're very busy, but I really had a great time talking to you, and I learned some things from your from your wisdom that you've learned and everything, and I do appreciate
you.
it. And one day maybe we could sit down again if there's any other things we'd like to maybe further the conversation with.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
Or we
appreciate
can
it.
have you jump in a class.
I know, right?
And we can have you on my YouTube channel.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.